The wind screamed across the Afghan-Pakistan border like a living thing, carrying with it the scent of dust
Stay tight,
and
watch the
distance.
flanks. Checkpoint
2,137 yards away, through the shimmering heat waves that danced above the valley floor, a man who had ended countless lives was about to meet his own end. Scarlett Ghost Reeves pressed her cheek against the stock of the Barrett M82, feeling the familiar weight of destiny settle onto her shoulders like an old coat. The .50 caliber rifle wasn't just a weapon, it was a promise, a reckoning, the final punctuation mark on a sentence that had been written 8 years ago with a broken rifle and the laughter of men who thought they knew better. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, 76 beats per minute, too fast. She closed her eyes, drew air deep into her lungs, and began the ritual that had kept her alive through 2 years of war. The breath flowed out slowly, carrying tension with it like smoke. 68 beats. Better. Another breath. 58. The numbers scrolled through her mind like scripture. Wind speed, 25 miles per hour, gusting from the northeast. Temperature, 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity, 30%. Barometric pressure, dropping. The Coriolis effect at this distance would push the round 6.8 inches to the right. She'd accounted for that. She'd accounted for everything. Through the scope, magnified 25 times, she could see individual stones in the compound wall. Could count the armed men pacing the perimeter. 43 hostiles. All of them would die if they got between her and the target. But they wouldn't. Because in 3 seconds, one man would step out of that building and the world would shift on its axis. They said women couldn't be snipers, she whispered to no one, to everyone, to the ghost of her father who died in this God-forsaken country. They handed me a broken rifle to prove it. Her finger found the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure separated past from future. But that was 8 years ago. The scope's reticle settled on empty space, waiting, patient as death itself. This is the shot that will change everything. And then 8 years fell away like autumn leaves, and she was 20 years old again, standing in the Georgia heat with rust on her hands and mockery in her ears. Scene 1, Day 1, The Broken Rifle. Fort Benning, Georgia, August 2017. The heat rose from the tarmac in waves thick enough to choke on. 51 men stood in formation, their backs straight as iron rods, their faces carved from stone and stubbornness. And one woman. Scarlett Reeves stood 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 118 pounds, soaking wet. Her red hair was pulled back so tight it made her scalp ache. Her green eyes, the color of sea glass, stared straight ahead at nothing and everything. She didn't blink, didn't breathe louder than a whisper, gave them nothing to use against her. But they'd find something. They always did. Master Sergeant Colt Haverford walked the line like a general inspecting troops before a suicide mission. 39 years old, 6 feet 2 inches of coiled muscle and combat ribbons. 15 years in Delta Force had turned him into something more machine than man. His eyes, the gray of gunmetal, missed nothing, forgave less. He stopped in front of each candidate, sized them up with a glance that could peel paint. Some he nodded at, some he smirked at. Most he simply moved past, already writing their stories, already knowing who would quit in the first 72 hours. When he reached Scarlett, he stopped, tilted his head like a wolf examining something that might be prey, might be threat, might be nothing at all. Reeves. His voice could have cut glass. Scarlett Ann Reeves, 20 years old, 5'3", 118, scored perfect on the ASVAB, top of your class at basic, maxed your PT test. He circled her slowly. Every man in formation watched from the corner of his eye. Daddy was Colonel Marcus Reeves, killed in action, Afghanistan, 2011. Granddaddy was Lieutenant Colonel Jackson Reeves, killed in action, Grenada, 1983. Haverford stopped directly in front of her. That's a lot of dead heroes in your family tree. Scarlett's jaw tightened. She said nothing. There was nothing to say. You think that earns you something here? Haverford leaned in close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. You think their sacrifice buys you a seat at this table? No, Sergeant. Then why are you here, Reeves? Why are you wasting my time and the Army's money on a fantasy that ends with you crying in some office, filing paperwork for real soldiers? The words hit like fists. Scarlett had heard variations of them her entire life, from recruiters, from drill sergeants, from uncles and cousins and family friends who all said the same thing in different ways. Your daddy and granddaddy were warriors. You're just a girl playing dress-up. I'm here to become a ranger, Sergeant. Haverford smiled. It was not a kind smile. We'll see. He moved down the line, his assistant, a staff sergeant built like a tank, following behind with a cart full of equipment. M4A1 rifles, rucksacks, canteens, body armor, the tools of transformation. One by one, candidates received their gear. Each rifle was inspected, cleaned, zeroed. Each piece of equipment checked for defects. This was the Rangers. Excellence was the minimum standard. Haverford reached the end of the line, circled back, stopped in front of Scarlett again. Sergeant Tully, he didn't look away from Scarlett. Get Miss Reeves her rifle. Tully reached under the cart, pulled out something that made several candidates snicker. An M4A1, yes, technically, but the barrel was rust orange. The stock cracked down the middle. The trigger guard bent at an angle that defied physics. It looked like something dug out of a desert grave. Here you go, Princess. Haverford held it out like a sacred offering. Special rifle, just for you. The laughter rippled through formation. Quiet, controlled, but there. Scarlett took the rifle. It was heavier than it should be. The barrel weighted wrong, the balance all off. She cycled the action. It stuck. Twice. On the third try, the bolt carrier slammed forward with a screech of metal on metal that made men wince. She held it up, sighted down the barrel. Even from this angle, she could see the cant. 5 degrees, maybe more. Firing this weapon would be like throwing darts with your eyes closed while someone spun you in circles. Sergeant, her voice was steady, calm. This rifle isn't operational. That so? Haverford's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Well then, I guess you better pack up and head home. We don't have time for charity cases who need special treatment. This was it. The first test. Maybe the only one that mattered. Scarlett could file a complaint, could demand a functioning weapon, could invoke a dozen regulations that said every soldier had the right to equipment that wouldn't blow up in their face. She'd be right. They'd have to give her another rifle, and she'd be marked, forever, as the girl who complained, who needed accommodation, who couldn't hang with the big boys. The laughter had stopped. Every man in formation watched, waiting. Scarlett slung the rifle across her back. The broken stock dug into her shoulder blade like a knife. Understood, Sergeant. Haverford blinked, just once. The surprise flickered across his face so fast she almost missed it. You're not going to complain? Demand a working rifle? No, Sergeant. I'll carry this one until qualification. Then I'll qualify with a functioning weapon. You'll carry that piece of junk through Hell Week? Haverford stepped closer. That's an extra 10 pounds of dead weight. For no reason. That's stupid. Scarlett met his eyes. That's commitment, Sergeant. For 3 heartbeats, silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Then Haverford stepped back, nodded once, and moved on. First formation, 0500 tomorrow. Don't be late, don't be last, and sure as hell don't quit on my watch. Rangers lead the way. Dismissed. The formation broke like a wave against rocks. Men scattered to barracks, to phones, to whatever sliver of freedom existed before the machine ground them down. Scarlett stood alone on the tarmac, the broken rifle heavy on her back, the Georgia sun beating down like judgment. A voice behind her, rough as gravel. Your grandfather would be proud. She turned. An old man stood at the edge of the parade ground, half in shadow, half in light. He had to be 70, maybe more. White hair cut high and tight, back straight despite the years. Eyes the blue of winter sky. Sir, don't quit. He nodded at the rifle. No matter what they do, don't quit. He walked away before she could respond, his gait steady, military precise. On his left hand, she caught the glint of a ring. Ranger scroll. Old school. The kind they gave out when Rangers really were crazy. Scarlett looked down at the rifle in her hands. Rust and broken dreams. 10 pounds of humiliation. A test she hadn't asked for but would damn sure pass. For you, Dad, she whispered to the empty air. For you, Grandpa. For every girl they said wasn't strong enough. She walked toward the barracks, the broken rifle across her back, and didn't look behind her once. Scene 2. 72 hours. The Crucible. They say the first 3 days of Ranger selection separate the warriors from the pretenders. That's a lie. The first 3 days are designed to break everyone, to strip away ego and comfort and the lies men tell themselves about who they are. The warriors are the ones who get broken and keep moving anyway. Scarlett's first day began at 04:30 with someone banging a trash can lid in the barracks and screaming about how they'd all be dead by sundown if they didn't move faster. She was dressed and in formation in 90 seconds. 20 other men were faster. The physical training test came first. Standard Army PT, push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. But this was Rangers. Standard meant perfect. 71 push-ups, minimum, Haverford said, his voice flat as a tombstone. 2 minutes, go. Scarlett dropped, arms straight, back level, down until her chest brushed the ground, up until her arms locked. Again and again. Around her, men grunted and strained, pushing their limits. Some hit 71 and stopped. Some hit 100 and kept going, showing off. Scarlett hit 71 and added 10 more because she could, because she had to, because anything less was an invitation for them to say she'd barely made it. The sit-ups were worse. 80 in 2 minutes. Her abs screamed. Her hip flexors felt like they were tearing apart, but she finished with 15 seconds to spare. The run was hell disguised as morning PT. 2 miles, 13 minutes, maximum. The Georgia heat climbed into the 90s before they hit the half-mile mark. Men fell out, vomiting on the side of the track. Scarlett kept pace with the front group, her lungs burning, her legs turning to concrete. She finished in 12 minutes, 43 seconds, 17th out of 52. Haverford checked his stopwatch, wrote something on his clipboard, said nothing. The obstacle course came next. 30 stations of rope climbs, wall scaling, crawls through mud under barbed wire, balance beams across water pits that smelled like rotting vegetables and broken dreams. Standard time was 12 minutes. Reeves! Haverford's voice cut across the morning like a blade. You get 8. Every head turned. 8 minutes? Scarlett's voice stayed level. Sergeant, the standard is 12. I don't recall asking for your input. Haverford checked his watch. 7 minutes, 59 seconds now. Looks like you're wasting time. She ran. The first obstacle was a 12-foot wall. Men got a running start, grabbed the top, pulled themselves over. Scarlett was 5'3". Her fingertips barely reached the lip. She had to jump, catch it with momentum, use every ounce of upper body strength to drag herself up and over. 10 seconds gone. The rope climb was 30 feet straight up. Her hands burned. The broken rifle on her back threw off her balance. She wrapped her legs around the rope, pulled, climbed, pushed through the scream in her shoulders. 28 seconds gone. The crawl under barbed wire stretched 50 yards through mud, thick as cake batter. Men could stay on their bellies, use their size to power through. Scarlett was smaller, lighter. The mud tried to swallow her. She clawed forward inch by inch, the wire snagging her uniform, drawing blood from her back. 1 minute, 50 seconds gone. Station after station, wall after wall, each one designed to stop her, each one another chance to quit. Her muscles burned. Her lungs couldn't find enough air. The world narrowed to the next obstacle, the next second, the next breath. She hit the final station, a balance beam over a water pit, with 6 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. 19 seconds to spare. She ran across it like she was running from death itself, hit the finish line, and collapsed onto her hands and knees. Haverford was there, stopwatch in hand. 6:47. Congratulations, Reeves. You passed. Barely. She looked up at him through sweat and mud. Thank you, Sergeant. Don't thank me. That wasn't a gift. That was me seeing if you'd quit when it got hard. He crouched down. Spoiler alert, it gets harder. The rest of day one was a blur of training. Land navigation with map and compass. Combat drills with rubber rifles. Classes on radio procedures and battle tactics. By nightfall, Scarlett's body was a symphony of pain. Every muscle screamed. Every joint ached. The broken rifle, which she'd carried everywhere as ordered, had worn a bloody trench into her shoulder. Day two began the same way. 0430, trash can lids, screaming. But this time the ruck march came with a PT. 25 miles, 85-pound pack, 8 hours maximum. Men got 65-pound packs. Scarlett's weighed 85. Sergeant, one of the other candidates said, a big guy from Texas named Garrett, that ain't fair. Haverford turned slowly. You volunteering to carry her pack, Garrett? No, Sergeant, just saying. Then shut your mouth and ruck up. Life ain't fair. War ain't fair. Rangers adapt and overcome. They rucked. 25 miles through Georgia pine forest, the humidity thick enough to swim through. The pack straps cut into Scarlett's shoulders. The broken rifle threw off her balance. At mile 8, her feet started bleeding. At mile 15, the world turned gray at the edges. At mile 20, she was moving on instinct alone, one foot in front of the other, because stopping meant quitting, and quitting meant they'd been right all along. She finished in 7 hours, 43 minutes, dead last, but finished. Haverford was waiting at the finish line. Reeves, medic tent, now. The medic, a specialist with tired eyes, took one look at her feet and whistled. Ma'am, you've got blisters on your blisters. These need treatment. I recommend you withdraw for medical reasons. No. Ma'am, tape them up. I'm continuing. The medic looked at Haverford. Haverford shrugged. The medic sighed and started rapping. Day 3 was worse. An 18-hour continuous training cycle. Combat drills. More PT. Classroom instruction on battle tactics. Then, at midnight, when exhaustion was a physical weight pressing down, they were woken up for a surprise training mission. You have 60 seconds to gear up and get outside, Haverford shouted into the barracks. Anyone not in formation gets recycled. Move! Scarlett moved on autopilot. Boots, uniform, body armor, rifle. Broken, useless rifle. Out the door. She made it in 58 seconds. 3 men didn't make it at all. The mission was simple. Navigate 5 miles through the woods to a designated point, retrieve a package, return. In teams of 4. At night, with no lights. Scarlett was paired with 3 men who'd barely spoken to her. Garrett, the Texan, a quiet kid from Minnesota named Paulson, and a former Marine named Brixton McAllister, who went by Hawk and had a face like a hatchet blade. All right, princess, Garrett said as they moved into the tree line. Try to keep up. 2 hours later, they were lost. We should be there by now, Paulson said, staring at the map by moonlight. We would be if someone could navigate, Garrett snapped. I can navigate fine. The checkpoint must be marked wrong. They argued. Scarlett said nothing, just pulled out her compass, checked the landmarks, did the math in her head. "We're half a mile west of where we should be," she said quietly. "We need to adjust northeast." All three men looked at her. "How do you know?" Hawk asked. "Because I've been tracking our movement. We veered off course at the creek crossing. Paulson was right about the heading, but we compensated wrong for the current." Hawk studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Lead the way." She did. They reached the checkpoint in 40 minutes, retrieved the package, made it back to base with 20 minutes to spare. As they walked across the parade ground, Hawk fell in beside her. "You're smarter than you look." "Thanks, I think." "No, I mean it. Most people panic when they're lost. You stayed calm. Did the math. That's a gift." It was the first kind thing anyone had said to her in 3 days. At 0200, Scarlett collapsed into her bunk. She had 2 hours before the next wake-up call. Her body was broken. Her feet were bleeding. The broken rifle lay beside her, rust flaking onto the sheets. She didn't cry, couldn't afford to. If they saw tears, they'd never let her forget it. Instead, she stared at the ceiling and thought about her father. About the photo on her wall back home, him in his dress uniform, the Medal of Honor around his neck, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. 6 months before an IED turned him into vapor and memory, she thought about her grandfather, about the stories her grandmother told, about a man who could shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 yards, who'd saved his entire team in Grenada, who died with a rifle in his hands and a prayer on his lips. She thought about the broken rifle, about Haverford's smirk, about the way the men looked at her like she was a puzzle they couldn't solve. And she thought, "I will not quit. Not today. Not ever." Just before sleep took her, she heard footsteps, opened her eyes. A figure stood at the end of her bunk, backlit by the hallway light. The old man from the parade ground, the one with the winter blue eyes. He didn't speak, just set something on her footlocker. Then he was gone, silent as smoke. Scarlett sat up, winced at the pain in every joint, looked at what he'd left. A notebook, old, leather-bound, worn soft with age. On the cover, in faded ink, Jackson Reeves, 1982 to 1983. Her grandfather's handwriting. She opened it with trembling hands. The first page read, "To whoever finds this, these are the lessons that kept me alive. May they serve you as well as they served me." J.R. Scarlett held the notebook to her chest and finally, let one tear fall. Then she wiped it away, opened to page 1, and started reading. Scene 3, The Inheritance. The journal was a roadmap through hell, written by a man who'd walked the path and survived. Page after page of techniques, observations, hard-won wisdom. How to read wind by watching grass bend. How to calculate bullet drop using nothing but instinct and experience. How to slow your heartbeat in combat until time itself seemed to stop. How to kill without hesitation and live with yourself after. But more than that, it was a voice from the grave, her grandfather's voice, direct, honest, unfiltered by family legend and polished stories. November 3rd, 1982. They say sniping is about patience. That's only half true. It's about knowing when to be patient and when to take the shot you've got instead of the shot you want. Hesitation kills, so does rushing. The art is knowing the difference. December 17th, 1982. Shot a man today at 840 yards, center mass. He never knew I was there. Tonight, I can't sleep. Not because I feel guilty, because I don't. Because I should feel guilty and I don't, and I wonder what that makes me. March 8th, 1983. Young specialist asked me today what makes a good sniper. Told him, the ability to be alone. Not just physically, mentally. You're separated from your unit, from backup, from everything. If you can't handle being alone with your thoughts, you'll fail. Or worse, you'll get someone killed. October 22nd, 1983. Tomorrow, Grenada. Intel says it's a cakewalk. I've learned to never trust Intel. If I don't return, may these notes help the next generation. War changes, weapons change, but warriors don't. We're all just trying to do the job and make it home. J.R. He hadn't made it home. The next day, October 23rd, 1983, he died at Point Salines airfield. The official report said he'd been killed by enemy fire while protecting his team's withdrawal. The unofficial story, the one Scarlett's grandmother whispered after too much wine, said he'd held off an entire company of enemy soldiers for 20 minutes while his team escaped. 89 confirmed kills in 20 minutes. When the rescue team reached his position, they found him surrounded by bodies, his rifle empty, a grenade in his hand with the pin pulled. He'd been 28 years old. She read until her eyes burned, until the words blurred together, until the 0430 wake-up call shattered the silence like a bomb. Day 4, then 5, then 6. The training was relentless, designed to break bodies and spirits with surgical precision. More PT, more rucking, combat drills that left men bruised and bloodied, night missions that turned the Georgia woods into a maze of shadows and exhaustion. Scarlett applied her grandfather's lessons like armor, used his wind-reading technique during marksmanship practice, applied his breathing methods during PT, followed his navigation tricks during land nav courses. She didn't tell anyone where she'd learned them. The techniques spoke for themselves. By day 7, she'd climbed from 17th to 9th in class rankings. Men who'd laughed at her broken rifle were asking her for advice. Garrett, the Texan who'd called her princess, started seeking her out during team exercises. But Haverford noticed too. On day 7, as the sun set over the parade ground, he called her aside. "Reeves, walk with me." They walked in silence for 100 yards, away from the barracks, toward the rifle range. Finally, Haverford stopped, looked at her with those gunmetal eyes. "You've improved." "Thank you, Sergeant." That wasn't a compliment, it was an observation. He crossed his arms. "You're using techniques I haven't seen in 30 years. Old school stuff. Where'd you learn it?" Scarlett hesitated. Lying to an instructor was grounds for dismissal, but telling the truth felt like exposing a sacred secret. "My grandfather's journal, Sergeant." Haverford's expression shifted. "Jackson Reeves, the ghost of Grenada." "Yes, Sergeant." "I knew him." Haverford's voice went soft. "Briefly. He came through Fort Benning in '82, gave a clinic on long-range shooting. I was fresh out of basic. He was something else, made shots that shouldn't have been possible. He died the next year." "I know." Haverford looked away, toward the tree line. 28 years old, saved 16 men, received the Medal of Honor posthumously. He turned back to Scarlett. "And his son, your father, died the same way, protecting his team. Another medal, another closed casket." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. "You're carrying a legacy, Reeves, a heavy one. It'll either make you or crush you." Haverford's voice hardened again. "Next week is qualification week. You said you'd qualify with a real rifle." "Yes, Sergeant." He reached behind his back, pulled out an M4A1, new, clean, perfectly maintained, held it out to her. "Take it." Scarlett took the rifle. It felt right in her hands, balanced, whole, everything the broken rifle wasn't. "Thank you, Sergeant." "Don't thank me, just prove you deserve it." He started to walk away, stopped. "And Reeves, your grandfather would be proud of you. Your father, too. Now prove I should be." He left her there, holding the new rifle, the broken one still slung across her back. And for the first time in 7 days, Scarlett smiled. But that night, sleep wouldn't come, because tomorrow was day 8, and something in the air felt different, like a storm building, like a test she hadn't prepared for. She pulled out her grandfather's journal, flipped to a random page. The entry was dated September 15th, 1983. "Sometimes the hardest shot isn't the longest one. It's the one you make when everyone's watching, when failure means more than missing, When success means proving you belong, those shots define you. J.R. Scarlett closed the journal, looked at the two rifles beside her bunk, the broken and the whole, the test and the redemption. Tomorrow, she decided, she would make a choice that would change everything. Tomorrow, she would prove the impossible was just another word for challenging. Tomorrow, she would honor her grandfather's legacy, not by following his path, but by forging her own. She fell asleep with the journal against her chest and dreamed of ghosts who smiled. Day 8 dawned cold and clear, the kind of morning that promised nothing and delivered everything. The rifle range stretched out like a sentence waiting to be completed, targets positioned at intervals that grew progressively more cruel. 100 yards, 200, 300, 400, 600. 50 targets, 40 hits to pass, 45 for distinguished honors. 31 candidates remained. 21 had quit or been cut. The survivors stood in a loose formation, their faces carved from exhaustion and determination. They'd earned the right to be here. Now came the moment when rights became reality or dissolved into might-have-beens. Master Sergeant Haverford stood at the firing line, clipboard in hand, his expression as readable as stone. Behind him, a table held 31 rifles, clean, zeroed, ready. "Gentlemen," he said, then paused, looked directly at Scarlett, "and lady, today you qualify or you go home. The standard is clear. 40 out of 50. Miss 11 or more, you're done. No retakes, no excuses, no second chances." He gestured to the rifles. "Weapons are assigned by lottery. Take what you're given. Adapt and overcome." One by one, candidates drew numbers, received their rifles, moved to firing positions. Garrett drew number 7. Hawk drew 23. Paulson drew 15. Scarlett drew number 31. The last rifle. Always the last. She walked to the table, reached for the rifle that corresponded to her number. Haverford's hand stopped her. "Reeves, before you take that weapon, I need to ask you something." The range fell silent. 30 men turned to watch. "Do you want a fair chance? A real rifle? Or do you want to make a statement?" Scarlett looked at the new M4A1 on the table, then at the broken rifle still slung across her back, the one she'd carried for 7 days like a cross, the one that had torn her shoulder raw and thrown off her balance and reminded her every single second that they wanted her to fail. Her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes the hardest shot isn't the longest one. It's the one you make when everyone's watching. "Sergeant," she said quietly, "I'd like to qualify with the rifle I was issued on day 1. Murmurs rippled through the candidates. Someone laughed, cut it short when Haverford glared. "You understand what you're asking?" Haverford stepped closer. "That weapon is compromised. Barrel cant of 5 degrees. Trigger mechanism that sticks. Sights that don't align. Even a perfect shooter would struggle to hit 30 targets with that piece of junk. You'd be lucky to hit 20. "I understand, Sergeant." "Then you're either brave or stupid. I haven't decided which." "Maybe both, Sergeant." Haverford studied her for 3 long heartbeats. Then he nodded. "All right, Reeves. But when you fail, remember this was your choice, not mine." "Yes, Sergeant." She unslung the broken rifle, felt its familiar weight settle into her hands. 7 days of carrying it had taught her every flaw, every quirk, every betrayal the weapon held. She knew where the barrel pulled right, knew how long the trigger delayed, knew that the stock's crack meant she had to adjust her cheek weld 3 inches higher than normal. Knowing and compensating were different things, especially under pressure, especially when 30 men watched, waiting for the inevitable failure. Scarlett moved to firing position 1, prone, the most stable position, the one that gave her the best chance. The first target stood 100 yards downrange, child's play for most shooters. For her, with this rifle, it was a calculus problem written in rust and doubt. She pressed her cheek against the stock, felt the crack dig into her skin, sighted down the barrel. The target swam in and out of focus, the cant pulling everything right. She adjusted, overcompensated, adjusted again. Breathe. Her grandfather's voice in her head. The rifle is just metal and wood. You're the weapon. You're the one who decides where the bullet goes. She squeezed the trigger. The delay felt like forever. Then the rifle bucked. The report echoed across the range. And 100 yards away, the target pinged. Hit. She worked the action. The bolt stuck. She cleared it, moved to target 2. Hit. Target 3. Target 4. Target 5. At 100 yards, she went 5 for 5. The murmurs grew louder. Haverford made a note on his clipboard, his face unreadable. The targets shifted to 200 yards. The cant became more pronounced, the trigger delay more critical. Scarlett adjusted her breathing, her timing, her entire approach. She wasn't shooting the rifle anymore. She was negotiating with it, bargaining with physics. Target 6. Hit. Target 7. Hit. Target 8. Hit. Target 9. Hit. Target 10. Hit. 10 for 10 at 200 yards. Someone whispered, "Holy shit." Haverford shot him a look that could have melted steel. The range fell silent again. 300 yards. The distance where good shooters became great ones, where flaws in equipment became magnified, where luck ran out and skill either carried you through or left you drowning. Scarlett took her time, calculated wind, temperature, the exact degree of barrel cant. Math, pure math. She fired. The bullet flew. 300 yards away, the target remained still. Miss. The word didn't exist in her vocabulary. She couldn't afford misses. Every target mattered. Every shot was a referendum on whether she belonged. She cleared her mind, recalculated. The wind had shifted 2 degrees. She'd felt it but hadn't adjusted enough. Rookie mistake, the kind that got people killed in combat. Target 12. She overcorrected. Hit. Target 13. Hit. Target 14. Hit. Target 15. Hit. 9 hits out of 10 at 300 yards. 19 total. 400 yards. The distance where the barrel cant became a monster, where the trigger delay meant she had to fire when the target was slightly left of where she wanted to hit, where every variable multiplied into chaos. But chaos was just math that looked messy. She fired, hit, fired, hit, fired, hit. 6 targets, 6 hits, 25 total, 500 yards. The distance she dreamed about as a child, watching her father practice. The distance that separated hunters from warriors. She missed target 26, compensated wrong for elevation. The bullet went high, sailed over the target, disappeared into the berm beyond. Missed 28. The trigger stuck completely, threw off her timing. She cleared it, fired again, hit the dirt 5 feet short. Hit 27, 29, 30. 27 hits out of 30. She needed 13 more out of 20 to pass. 600 yards, the longest distance in the qualification, the one that usually separated distinguished candidates from everyone else. At 600 yards with a perfect rifle, under ideal conditions, good shooters hit 70% of their targets. Great shooters hit 90%. Scarlett needed to hit 13 out of 20, 65%, with a broken rifle. In front of 30 men who wanted to see her fail, she settled into position, felt the broken stock dig into her shoulder, felt the weight of history and expectation pressed down like atmosphere. Her grandfather had made an 840-yard shot in combat. Her father had qualified expert marksman 3 years running. The Reeves bloodline didn't miss. Couldn't afford to. She fired. Target 31. Hit. Target 32. Hit. Target 33. Miss. The wind gusted, pushed the round 6 inches right. Target 34. Hit. Target 35. Hit. The math was simple now. 16 hits so far. Needed 40 to pass. 24 shots remaining. Needed 24 more hits for distinguished. Every shot mattered. Every breath. Every heartbeat. Target 36. Miss. She'd overcompensated for wind. The bullet went left, missed by inches. 37 through 41. 5 hits. 21 total hits. 29 shots fired. 21 shots remaining. Needed 19 hits to pass. Needed 24 for distinguished. The pressure built like a physical thing. Scarlett felt it in her chest, her hands, the base of her skull. Felt the eyes of 30 men watching. Felt Haverford's skepticism like a weight. Felt her grandfather's ghost standing behind her, patient and proud. She fired. Hit. Fired. Hit. Fired. Hit. The rhythm took over. She stopped thinking about the rifle, about the flaws, about the impossible nature of what she was attempting. She became the shot, became the bullet's path through air, became the mathematics of wind and gravity and desire. Target after target, hit after hit. When the smoke cleared and the last echo faded, Scarlett cleared the rifle, set it down, and stood. Haverford walked downrange with binoculars, counted, counted again, walked back. His face was unreadable. He consulted his clipboard, made a notation, looked at Scarlett. Reeves, approach. She did. Every candidate watched. The morning had gone silent except for wind through the pines. 50 targets, Haverford said. You hit 48. The number hung in the air like a verdict. 40 hits to pass, 45 for distinguished. He paused. You scored 96%, with a rifle that by all rights shouldn't hit the broadside of a barn. He turned to address the entire range. Highest qualification score this cycle, achieved with compromised equipment under observation. He looked back at Scarlett. How? She thought about lying, about saying it was luck, about downplaying what she'd done so the men wouldn't resent her success. But her grandfather hadn't lied. Her father hadn't made excuses, and she wouldn't either. I calculated compensation for barrel cant, trigger delay, sight misalignment, Sergeant. Every shot was adjusted for known flaws in the weapon system. The rifle didn't change. My understanding of it did. Haverford stared at her for 5 seconds that felt like hours. Then he did something Scarlett had never seen him do. He smiled. A real smile, not mocking, not condescending, genuine. Outstanding, Ranger. Fucking outstanding. He turned to the other candidates. That, gentlemen, is what adaptation looks like. That's what overcoming obstacles means. Some of you will score higher with perfect equipment. Good for you. But when the shit hits the fan and your rifle jams or your scope breaks or everything goes wrong, remember this moment. Remember that a woman 5'3" and change just showed you that equipment doesn't make the shooter. The shooter makes the equipment matter. He handed Scarlett the new M4A1 from the table. This is yours now. Earned, not given. Thank you, Sergeant. Don't thank me. You did the work. He lowered his voice. Your grandfather would have loved to see this. So would your father. Hell, I'm honored to witness it. As Scarlett walked back to the barracks, rifle in hand, candidates made way. Some nodded, some looked away, but none of them laughed. Hawk fell in beside her. Reeves, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot. Just did what needed doing. Bullshit, that was excellence under pressure. He grinned. Glad you're on our side. That night, alone in her bunk, Scarlett opened her grandfather's journal to the last entry, the one written the day before he died. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't mourn too long. I did what I was meant to do. Now it's your turn. Make every shot count. Live with honor. Die with none left to give. J.R. She closed the journal, looked at the new rifle beside her bunk, looked at the broken one she'd kept. Tomorrow was day 9. 3 more weeks until graduation. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at Fort Benning, she felt like she belonged. Scene 5. Advanced Phase, Evolution. The next 3 weeks transformed candidates from potential into product. The training intensified, focused less on physical endurance and more on tactical proficiency. Room clearing, building assault, ambush tactics, the dark arts of warfare that separated soldiers from rangers. Scarlett excelled. Her grandfather's journal had covered some of these techniques, written in the sparse language of a man who'd seen too much and said too little. But more than that, something had shifted inside her. The qualification had broken through a wall she hadn't known existed. The men no longer saw her as an intruder. They saw her as competition. It was a better kind of respect. Week 3 brought advanced marksmanship, not qualification shooting, but practical application. Moving targets, elevated positions, stress conditions designed to simulate combat. The instructors set up a scenario: hostage rescue. One target held a dummy representing a civilian. Shooters had to hit the target without hitting the hostage. Distance, 400 yards. Wind, variable. Time limit, 1 shot, 3 seconds. 15 candidates attempted it. 12 missed entirely. 2 hit the hostage. 1 grazed the target's shoulder. Scarlett's turn. She studied the setup. The target stood behind the hostage, only his head and right shoulder visible. The wind shifted every few seconds. The 3-second limit meant she couldn't wait for perfect conditions. Her grandfather's voice. Perfect conditions are a myth. You take the shot you have. She settled into position, controlled her breathing, felt the wind on her left cheek. Southwest, gusting, strong enough to push the round 4 inches at this distance. 2 seconds. The target shifted, more of his head visible. 1 second. The wind dropped momentarily. She fired. 400 yards away, the target's head snapped back. Perfect hit. The hostage untouched. Haverford checked through binoculars, nodded once. Outstanding. Week 4 introduced team operations. Candidates were divided into fire teams of 4. Scarlett was grouped with Hawk, Garrett, and Paulson. They'd worked together enough to develop a rhythm, the kind of unspoken coordination that meant survival in combat. The scenario: infiltrate an enemy compound, secure intelligence, exfiltrate without being detected. The compound was defended by instructors playing enemy forces. They had night vision, training, and a mandate to make the candidates' lives miserable. Scarlett's team drew infiltration route Delta, the hardest approach. It required crossing open ground under observation, then climbing a 15-foot wall while carrying full gear. "This is suicide," Garrett muttered as they studied the map. "We'll get lit up crossing that field." "Not if we don't cross it," Scarlett said. All 3 men looked at her. "What if we go under instead of across?" She pointed to a drainage culvert marked on the map. "It runs under the field, comes up inside the compound perimeter." "That culvert is probably booby-trapped," Hawk said. "Probably, but it's not being watched. They expect us to try the direct approach." Paulson checked the map measurements. "Culvert is 3 feet wide. We'd have to low-crawl 300 yards. Better than getting shot crossing open ground." They voted, 3-1 in favor. Garrett was the holdout, but he agreed to follow the team decision. At 200, they entered the culvert. The space was tight, dark, filled with water that smelled like rot and regret. Scarlett led, feeling ahead for tripwires, pressure plates, anything that would trigger an alarm. 200 yards in, she found it. A wire, ankle height, connected to a flashbang simulator. "Hold," she whispered into the radio. "Trap at my position." She studied it in the red glow of her flashlight. Simple design. Cut the wire, the flashbang triggers. Step over it, same result. Unless you understood the mechanism. She pulled out her knife, cut a piece of paracord, tied one end to the wire, the other to a rock. Slowly, carefully, she pulled the rock back, creating tension on the wire. Then she cut the wire itself. The tension released onto the rock instead of the trigger mechanism. The flash bang stayed silent. Clear, moving. They emerged inside the compound at 0247. The intelligence was stored in a building guarded by two instructors. Standard approach would be to neutralize the guards, grab the intel, run. Scarlet had a different idea. Hawk, you're our size. Can you fit through that ventilation duct? He looked at the building, at the ductwork visible along the roofline. Maybe. Why? Because everyone expects a frontal assault. Nobody expects someone to drop in from above. They boosted Hawk onto the roof. He disappeared into the ductwork. 3 minutes later, he emerged from inside the building, intel package in hand, guards none the wiser. Exfiltration was a scramble, instructors finally realizing something was wrong. But by then, Scarlet's team was gone, shadows disappearing into the Georgia night. Haverford was waiting at the extraction point. Explain your route. Scarlet did. Every decision, every adaptation. When she finished, Haverford was silent for 10 seconds. Then, that was not the route I expected. It was not the route any team has ever taken. But it worked. You thought like the enemy, exploited their assumptions, accomplished the mission with zero compromise. He looked at all four of them. This is what Rangers do. This is why we're the best. Dismissed. As they walked back, Garrett clapped Scarlet on the shoulder. I was wrong about you. Hell, I was wrong about a lot of things. We all were, Hawk said, but we're learning. Week 5 brought the final field training exercise. 5 days in the woods, living off minimal rations, completing objectives under constant pressure. Weeks 6 and 7 brought culminating exercises, combining everything they learned into complex scenarios that tested their limits. It was designed to be the final proving ground before graduation. Scene 6, Field Training Crisis, Real Danger. Day 1 of the final FTX started like every other training exercise. Candidates inserted via truck to a remote section of Fort Benning's training area. Objectives were assigned, teams dispatched. The game began. Scarlet's team, the 4 of them moving like a single organism now, made good progress. They avoided enemy patrols, secured their first 2 objectives, settled into a hide site for the night. Day 2 was harder. The instructors knew their patterns now, adjusted defensive positions, forced them to adapt constantly. But they were Rangers. Adaptation was their religion. Day 3, everything changed. At 14:30 hours, the emergency frequency crackled to life. All units, cease exercise. Repeat, cease exercise. Actual emergency in progress. 2 candidates missing. Grid coordinates to follow. All teams return to base immediately. Search and rescue is being organized. Scarlet pulled out her map, marked the coordinates of the missing candidates, checked their current position. We're 8 miles from them, she said, closer than anyone else. Hawk keyed his radio. Command, this is Hawk Team. We're closest to the missing candidates. Request permission to assist. The response came from Haverford. Negative, Hawk Team. You are candidates, not SAR personnel. RTB immediately. Scarlet took the radio. Sir, with respect, we can reach them in 2 hours. SAR will take 4 or 5. If they're injured, every minute counts. Static. Then, what's your plan, Reeves? Fast movement to their last known position. Basic tracking and search patterns. If we find them, we stabilize and call for immediate extraction. If we don't find them in 90 minutes, we pull back and let professionals handle it. More static. Haverford was calculating, weighing risk against benefit, training candidates against real rescue. Finally, approved, but you follow search protocol to the letter. Report every 15 minutes. Deviate from this plan and you're all recycled. Understood? Yes, Sergeant. They moved fast. Ranger fast. The kind of movement that covered ground without sacrificing awareness. The missing candidates were Morrison and Kent, both solid performers, both experienced outdoorsmen. For them to vanish meant something had gone seriously wrong. At 15:20, They found the first sign: broken branches, disturbed ground, signs of a struggle. Something spooked them, Garrett said. They ran this direction. They followed the trail. It led into a ravine, steep-sided and choked with underbrush. At the bottom, water flowed over rocks, creating a natural corridor. At 1547, they found Morrison. He was conscious but pale, his left leg bent at an angle that made Scarlett's stomach turn. Compound fracture, Paulson said, kneeling beside him. He'd been a paramedic before joining the Army. Tibia and fibula. He needs immediate medical attention. "Where's Kent?" Hawk asked. Morrison's teeth chattered. "Downstream. He went for help. That was 4 hours ago." Scarlett keyed the radio. "Command, we've located Morrison. He has a compound leg fracture showing signs of shock. We need immediate medevac to these coordinates." "Copy. Medevac en route. ETA 45 minutes. What about Kent?" "Still missing. We're searching." They stabilized Morrison as best they could, splinted his leg, wrapped him in emergency blankets. Then Scarlett, Hawk, and Garrett moved downstream while Paulson stayed with Morrison. They found Kent at 16:08. He was unconscious, lying half in the stream, a gash across his forehead bleeding freely. His pulse was weak, but present. "Concussion, maybe worse," Garrett said. "How the hell do we get both of them out of here?" The ravine walls were too steep to climb while carrying injured men. The helicopter couldn't land inside. They'd have to carry both candidates 3 miles downstream to where the ravine opened into flatter terrain. 3 miles. 2 injured men. 4 candidates. 45 minutes before dark. "We make stretchers," Scarlett said. "Use branches in paracord. Carry them in shifts." They worked fast, built 2 crude stretchers, loaded Morrison onto one, Kent onto the other. Started moving. It was brutal. The terrain fought them at every step. Rocks turned ankles. The stream tried to sweep them away. Darkness fell like a hammer, forcing them to use red lens flashlights that turned the world into a nightmare of shadows and stumbling. But they moved. Ranger march. 1 foot in front of the other. When one person's arms gave out, someone else took over. When someone slipped, the team caught them. This was what training had been for. Not the shooting, not the tactics. This, the moment when everything went wrong and you had to do it anyway. At 1947, they reached the landing zone. The medevac helicopter was waiting, rotors turning, medics rushing forward. Morrison and Kent were loaded, stable, alive. As the helicopter lifted off, Haverford emerged from a command vehicle. He walked straight to Scarlett. "Report." She did. Every detail, every decision. When she finished, Haverford looked at her team. All 4 of them covered in mud, exhausted, shaking from adrenaline come-down. "You disobeyed a direct order to cease training," he said. Scarlett's heart sank. "Sir, you disobeyed that order to save 2 lives, to put Ranger values above personal safety, to demonstrate that this isn't just training, it's a calling." He paused. "That's the finest act of leadership I've seen from candidates in 15 years. He saluted them. 4 candidates, covered in mud and blood, saluted back. "Exercise is terminated," Haverford said. "Everyone back to base. You're all getting hot food and 8 hours of sleep. Then we graduate you bastards and send you out to terrify our enemies." As they walked to the transport truck, Hawk put his arm around Scarlett's shoulders. "You know what you are, Reeves?" "What?" "A goddamn Ranger. No question, no doubt." She smiled, tired, proud, complete. "Yeah," she said, "I think I am." Scene 7. Graduation and deployment. Week 8. Graduation day. 19 candidates stood in formation. 33 had quit or been cut. These 19 had survived everything Fort Benning could throw at them. They'd earned the tan beret, the Ranger tab, the right to say they'd passed the hardest military training in the world. The ceremony was held on the parade ground, where Scarlett had first received her broken rifle. Full dress uniforms, families in attendance, a perfect November morning that felt like absolution. General Theodore Kincaid, the old man who'd left her the journal, stood at the podium. He'd cleaned up well. His uniform was covered in ribbons, testament to a career spent in shadows and sacrifice. "Rangers," he began, his voice carrying across the field, "you've joined an elite brotherhood, not because you're stronger or faster or better than everyone else, but because you refused to quit when quitting was the logical choice. Because you chose duty over comfort. Because when the nation calls, you don't ask why, you ask where and when." He paused, looked directly at Scarlett. "This class is historic for many reasons, but primarily because it proves what I've known for 40 years. Excellence has no gender. Courage has no prerequisites except willingness, and the warrior spirit exists in anyone brave enough to embrace it." He called candidates forward one by one, presented tabs, shook hands. When he reached Scarlett, he didn't just shake her hand, he saluted first. "Ranger Reeves," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "your grandfather, Jackson Reeves, was the finest sniper I ever served with. He saved my life in Grenada. I owed him a debt I could never repay." He reached behind the podium, pulled out a rifle case, opened it. Inside was a Remington 700, custom, beautiful, the same one from the storage unit. This was his, now it's yours. Use it to honor his memory. Use it to protect those who can't protect themselves. Use it to show the world what Rangers really are. Scarlett took the rifle case. Her hands trembled. "Sir, No words needed, Ranger, just action. That's the Reeves way." The ceremony concluded with the Ranger Creed, 19 voices speaking as one, words that had defined generations of warriors. When it ended, when families rushed forward, when celebration began, Scarlett stood alone for a moment with her grandfather's rifle. She whispered to ghosts only she could hear, "I did it. For you. For Dad. For everyone who said I couldn't." The wind answered. Or maybe it was just wind. 6 months later, she was in Iraq. The 75th Ranger Regiment, 3rd Battalion. Her unit conducted direct action raids against high-value targets, the kind of missions that didn't make the news because success meant silence. Her call sign became Ghost. Not just because of her grandfather, but because she had a talent for disappearing into terrain, for making impossible shots, for being where the enemy least expected. 23 confirmed kills in 2 years, each one documented, each one necessary, each one a weight she carried without complaint. The other Rangers treated her like one of their own. No special treatment, no kid gloves, just respect earned through blood and bullets. Hawk was there too. They'd both been assigned to the same platoon. Combat strengthened the bond training had forged. They became a two-person element, perfectly synchronized, deadlier than squads twice their size. After 2 years, after Iraq shifted into Afghanistan, after missions that blurred together into one endless deployment, Scarlett received orders. Report to Bagram Airfield. Special tasking, high priority. She'd been in country for 6 weeks, had started to think this deployment would be like all the others. She had no idea that the next mission would define her entire career. The briefing room at Bagram was cold despite the Afghan heat outside. Scarlett sat with Hawk and 2 other Rangers she didn't know. At the front of the room, a CIA officer named Patterson clicked through slides showing satellite imagery of a compound near the Pakistan border. "Gentlemen," Patterson said, then glanced at Scarlett, "and ma'am, we have a problem named Mikhail Volkov." The next slide showed a man in his 50s, hard eyes, expensive suit, the look of someone who'd built empires on suffering. Volkov is a Russian arms dealer. He's been supplying terrorist networks with weapons for 20 years. But recently, he's expanded into chemical weapons. We have intel that he's brokered a deal to provide sarin gas to a group operating in the region. Patterson's expression darkened. Volkov is also responsible for the 2011 IED attack that killed Colonel Marcus Reeves and his team. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at Scarlett. Her face remained impassive, but inside something cold and sharp clicked into place. Volkov is meeting with buyers tomorrow at this compound, Patterson continued. We have a 48-hour window to eliminate him before he disappears again. The problem is location. The compound is in a valley, surrounded by ridges. Ground infiltration would be detected. Air assault would give them time to disperse. He brought up another slide, a topographical map showing a ridge overlooking the compound. We need a sniper. The shot is 2,100 yards, 2.1 kilometers, one of the longest combat shots ever attempted. Patterson looked directly at Scarlett. Ghost, this is your mission, if you want it. The room held its breath. Scarlett thought about her father, about the day the officers came to the door, about her mother's scream, about the funeral where they'd buried an empty casket because there wasn't enough left to send home. She thought about the broken rifle, about 8 years of proving herself, about every person who'd said she wasn't strong enough, wasn't capable enough, wasn't enough. She thought about her grandfather's last journal entry. Make every shot count. I'll take it, she said. Patterson nodded. Mission brief in 6 hours. Insertion tomorrow at 0200. You'll have 1 shot. As the room cleared, Hawk pulled her aside. Ghost, this is a hell of a shot. Are you sure? She met his eyes. He killed my father. I'm sure. Then I'm coming with you, as your spotter. Hawk, don't argue. You're the best shooter I know. But even the best needs someone watching their back. She nodded. Okay, together. Always. The detailed briefing 6 hours later laid out every aspect of the mission. Scarlett absorbed it all. Wind patterns, temperature data, terrain analysis, the compound layout, guard positions, Volkov's expected arrival time. Master Sergeant Haverford was there, running tactical command. When he pulled Scarlett aside after the briefing, his expression was serious. You know what you're attempting is insane, he said. Yes, Sergeant. 2,000 yards, variable wind, 1 shot. But if anyone can make it, it's you. He pulled out a small notebook. The last 2 years, I've been studying long-range shooting. This is everything I've learned about extreme distance shots, wind reading, temperature effects, the Coriolis effect at range. He handed her the notebook. Use it. And remember, don't think about revenge. Don't think about your father. Think only about the shot. Be the math. Be the wind. Be the bullet. Yes, Sergeant. One more thing. If you make this shot, you'll be famous. They'll want to make you a symbol. Decide now how you'll handle that. I just want to do the job. I know, but fame comes whether you want it or not. He stepped back. Make it count, Ranger. That night, Scarlett prepared her equipment with ritual precision. The Barrett M82 for the mission, 30 pounds of destructive power capable of reaching across mountains. Her grandfather's Remington 700 sat beside it, a reminder of legacy. Tomorrow belonged to the Barrett. Tonight belonged to memories. She opened her grandfather's journal one last time, read his final words. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't mourn too long. I did what I was meant to do. Now it's your turn. Make every shot count. She closed the journal. Tomorrow she would honor his memory. Tomorrow she would become legend. Scene 9. The insertion and wait. The helicopter insertion went smoothly. Low and fast through Afghan darkness. 40 minutes of following terrain until the MH-60 flared at the landing zone. They were off and running before the skids touched ground. 10 kilometers to Hotel 7 Ridge. Through rocky desert and steep hillsides. Scarlett and Hawk moved with Cortez and Williams, their 2-man security element. 4 Rangers against the night. The hike took 5 hours. Slow, careful movement through Taliban country. They reached the hide site at 0517, just as dawn broke over the mountains. The position was perfect. A depression on the ridge's south face, protected by rocks, with a clear view down into the valley. The compound sat 2,137 yards away, small and insignificant from this height. They spent 2 hours building the hide. Natural materials, invisible from below, created a firing aperture, set up the spotting scope, arranged ammunition, tested everything twice. At 7:30, the position was ready. Now came the hard part, waiting. The sun climbed. By 900, the temperature hit 80 degrees. By 1100, 90. The hide became an oven. Scarlett drank water in small sips, ate energy bars, watched the compound through the spotting scope, counted guards, memorized patrol patterns, waited. Hawk monitored wind every 10 minutes. The valley created unpredictable microclimates. At 1000 hours, 8 miles per hour from the southwest. At 10:30, 15 from the west. At 1100, it dropped to 5. "This is going to be tricky," Hawk said. "Wind's not consistent." "It never is." Scarlett adjusted her position behind the Barrett. She'd been prone for hours. Her body ached, but she didn't move. Movement created patterns. Patterns got you killed. At 1200, Haverford's voice crackled over the radio. "Ghost Command, update. In position. Compound under observation. 43 hostiles counted. No sign of primary target. Copy. Intel confirms target ETA 1400 hours. Stand by." 2 more hours. Scarlett used the time to run calculations. Distance, 2,137 yards. Elevation, 400 feet above target. Current wind, 12 miles per hour, west-northwest. Temperature, 91 degrees. Humidity, 30%. The math created a picture. At this distance, with these conditions, she needed to aim 6 feet left and 3 feet high. The bullet would drop approximately 450 inches over its flight. Wind would push it right, gravity would pull it down. The Coriolis effect would add another 8 inches of drift. 6 feet left, 3 feet high. Trust the math, trust the rifle, trust herself. At 13:30, activity at the compound increased. Vehicles moved into position. Guards multiplied. "Hawk, I see it. Increased security. VIP arrival protocol." Scarlett's heart rate climbed. 76 beats per minute. Too fast. She controlled her breathing, slowed it deliberately. 68. Better. At 13:52, a convoy appeared on the valley road. 3 vehicles. SUVs. Expensive. Armored. "Ghost Command. Drone confirms target in second vehicle. Repeat, primary target is in second vehicle." Scarlett's hands found the rifle. 8 years of training made the movement automatic. Left hand supported the forend. Right hand wrapped around the grip, finger alongside the trigger guard. Not on the trigger, not yet. Never until ready to fire. The convoy entered the compound. Stopped. Doors opened. Security emerged from the first vehicle. They fanned out, weapons ready, scanning for threats they'd never see. The second vehicle's door opened. A man stepped out. 50s, gray hair, expensive suit absurd in the Afghan desert. Mikhail Volkov. "Positive ID on primary target," Hawk said. "Range 2137 yards. Wind 12 miles per hour west-northwest." Holding steady. Volkov walked toward the main building, surrounded by guards, moving quickly, maybe 30 seconds before he'd be inside. Scene 10. The shot. Scarlett's training took over. The world narrowed to the view through the scope, to the crosshairs settling on empty space ahead of Volkov's path, leading the target, accounting for his movement. 6 feet left, 3 feet high. Trust the math. Her breathing slowed. 4 breaths. 3, 2. Between breaths, between heartbeats, in the space where time stopped, she found stillness. Volkov stopped walking, bent down. A child had run out from somewhere, a local Afghan kid, maybe 6 years old. Volkov patted the child's head, said something. The child ran back. "Ghost, you've got maybe 5 seconds," Hawk whispered urgently. "He's about to move inside." Volkov straightened, turned, started walking toward the building entrance. 3 seconds to cover 20 feet. 3 seconds before he'd disappear and the mission would fail. Scarlett didn't think. Thinking was the enemy of instinct. She'd calculated everything that could be calculated. Now came the moment when math met faith. The crosshairs settled. 6 feet left of where Volkov was, 3 feet high, leading him, trusting that in 6.8 seconds, he and the bullet would occupy the same space. Her finger moved to the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. Nothing in the universe except this moment. She exhaled half a breath. Stopped. Between breaths, the body is most stable. Between heartbeats, the world holds still. She squeezed. The Barrett roared. The recoil drove into her shoulder like a hammer. The massive .50 caliber round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, spinning, stabilized, beginning its long arc through the sky. For 6.8 seconds, the bullet flew. Scarlett didn't watch through the scope. The spotter did that. She worked the bolt, chambered another round, prepared for a follow-up she prayed she wouldn't need. "Flight time," Hawk said, his eye pressed to the spotting scope. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. 2,000 yards away, Mikhail Volkov's head snapped back. He dropped instantly, completely, the way people do when the switch is flipped and everything stops. "Hit!" Hawk's voice exploded with suppressed excitement. "Center mass! Confirmed kill! Ghost, you just made history!" The compound erupted into chaos. Guards ran everywhere, weapons fired randomly, vehicles revved engines. Nobody knew where the shot came from. At this distance, the sound arrived seconds late, echoing off valley walls, directionless. "Ghost command. Confirmed target elimination." "Target eliminated," Scarlett said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Primary objective complete." "Outstanding. Initiate exfil protocol. Extraction standing by." Scarlett started to move, to pack the rifle, to leave. Then she stopped. Looked back through the spotting scope one more time. Volkov lay on the ground. Men crouched around him. One checked for pulse, shook his head. The killer of her father. Gone. She'd expected to feel triumph, satisfaction. Instead, she felt empty. The shot had been perfect. The math had worked. But her father was still dead. Justice didn't resurrect the fallen. "Ghost," Hawk said gently. "We need to move." She nodded. They broke down the position quickly, packed everything, left no trace except disturbed earth invisible from below. At 14:19, 17 minutes after the shot, they began moving toward extraction. 12 kilometers, 4 hours of hard movement. Scene 11, the escape. The first kilometer was uneventful. They moved fast, following the same route they'd used on approach. Then at kilometer 2, everything changed. Cortez, on point, suddenly hit the ground. "Contact front! Multiple hostiles, 500 meters!" Scarlett dropped, bringing the Barrett up. Through the scope, she saw them. 8 Taliban fighters moving up the ridge. Not a patrol. A pursuit. Someone at the compound had figured out the shot came from this direction. "Command, Ghost, we have 8 hostiles in pursuit, requesting guidance." "Engage or evade?" Haverford's voice was tight. Scarlett calculated. 8 hostiles, 4 rangers. Engaging meant time in contact. Time for reinforcements. Evade, we'll bypass. They moved west, off their planned route, following a narrow ravine. The ravine led deeper into the mountains, away from extraction. Every step took them farther from safety, but every step also took them farther from contact. At 15:34, they stopped to reassess. 12 kilometers had become 15. 4 hours had become 6. They had 3 hours of daylight left. "We're not making extraction before dark," Williams said. "Then we make it in the dark," Scarlett said. "Rangers can move at night." They pushed on. The terrain grew rougher. Steep climbs, narrow paths. The Barrett grew heavier with every kilometer. Scarlett's shoulder ached, but she didn't complain. This was the job. At 16:47 they heard it. Helicopter rotors. Close. "Down," Hawk hissed. They dove for cover as a Taliban helicopter swept over the ridge. Old Soviet Mi-17, probably captured or purchased. It circled, clearly searching. Searching for them. "How did they get air assets this fast?" Cortez whispered. "Volkov had money," Hawk said. "Money buys everything." The helicopter made 3 passes, each closer. On the third, it hovered directly over their position. Scarlett could see the door gunner scanning the ground. Then it moved on, continuing south. "Move," Scarlett ordered, "before it comes back." They ran. Not tactical movement anymore, just running. Speed over stealth. The extraction point was 8 kilometers away. The helicopter would find them again. Their only chance was reaching the LZ first. At 18:03, the sun touched the mountains. At 18:17, darkness began. They switched to night vision, pushed harder. 7 kilometers. 6. 5. At 19:01, the helicopter found them again. This time, no cover. They were crossing open ground. The helicopter rose from behind a peak, spotlight blazing, catching them in its beam. The door gun opened fire. Tracers lit the darkness. Rounds kicked up dirt and rock. Scarlett ran, the Barrett bouncing, her lungs screaming, legs pumping on pure adrenaline. "Return fire," Hawk shouted. They turned, weapons up, engaging the helicopter. Small arms against a gunship was suicide. But what choice did they have? Rounds sparked off the fuselage. The door gunner flinched, stopped firing momentarily. That moment saved them. They reached cover. A cluster of boulders dove behind it. The helicopter circled, searching for an angle. The pilot's voice echoed through a loudspeaker, speaking Pashto. The meaning was clear. Surrender or die. "Ghost, command. We're tracking. Extraction helicopter inbound, but still 20 minutes out. Can you hold?" 20 minutes, an eternity. "We'll hold," Scarlett said. The Taliban helicopter made another pass, dropped a grenade. The explosion was deafening. Shrapnel whined. When her ears stopped ringing, Scarlett checked. Everyone moving. No one hit. Pure luck. But luck ran out. The helicopter settled into a hover 300 meters away, close enough for accurate fire, far enough that their weapons were ineffective. "We need to take out that helicopter," Williams said. "With what?" Cortez snapped. Scarlett looked at the Barrett, looked at the helicopter, calculated. "I do." Hawk turned. "Ghost. That's crazy. 300 meters, moving target, low light. I only need 1 second." She unslung the Barrett, moved to the edge of cover. The helicopter hung in the air. Through the scope, she could see the pilot, the door gunner adjusting aim. 300 meters. The Barrett was designed for this. But helicopters were designed not to be shot down by rifles. The fuselage was armored. She needed to hit something vital, the engine. If she could hit the intake, the turbine would ingest the bullet, fragments would shred the compressor, the helicopter would lose power. She found the intake in her scope, 8 inches across, moving as the helicopter adjusted position, 300 meters away. Her grandfather had made an 840-yard shot in combat. Her father had saved lives at 600 yards. She just made a 2,137-yard shot. What was 300 meters? She centered the crosshairs, accounted for movement, breathed out, found the stillness, fired. The .50 caliber round crossed 300 meters in under half a second, hit the engine intake dead center. The bullet disintegrated, but fragments entered the turbine at supersonic speed. The engine note changed from smooth to screaming. Black smoke poured out. The helicopter lurched, lost altitude, the pilot fighting for control. It settled hard, one skid collapsing. The crew scrambled out, alive but grounded. Extraction helicopter inbound. 2 minutes. Haverford's voice was jubilant. Ghost, how the hell did you hit the engine intake? Just math, Sergeant. They moved to the extraction point. The MH-60 came in fast, flaring hard. They were aboard before it fully landed, crew chief hauling them in. As the helicopter lifted, Scarlett looked back at the grounded Taliban aircraft. At the valley beyond, where Volkov lay dead. At the mountains that had taken so much from her family. It's done, Hawk said. You did it. She nodded, but it didn't feel done. Scene 12. Aftermath and Decision. The return to Bagram felt surreal. Debriefing lasted 3 hours. Intelligence officers wanted every detail. Drone footage was analyzed. Scarlett's shot was measured, verified, documented. 2,137 yards. The 5th longest confirmed kill shot in military history. The longest ever made by a woman. When it was over, Scarlett walked back to her quarters, sat on her bunk, stared at nothing. Hawk came with water and food. Command is thrilled. That shot will be studied for decades. They're talking medals, press releases. Scarlett bit into the protein bar. I don't want that. I know, but you don't get to choose. You're going to be famous. They'll want to use you as proof that women can serve in combat. I just wanted to do the job. And you did. Better than anyone thought possible. Hawk leaned forward. But that means responsibility. People will look up to you, young women who want to serve. They'll see you and think, maybe they can too. That matters. Maybe it did. But in that moment, Scarlett was too exhausted to care. 1 week later, she stood in a conference room at Bagram, full dress uniform. Secretary of Defense Callahan stood at a podium. Ranger Scarlett Reeves, Callahan began, for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. On this date, Ranger Reeves executed a precision, long-range shot that eliminated a high-value target responsible for the deaths of American service members. This action, conducted at a distance of 2,137 yards, represents one of the most difficult shots in modern military history. He lifted a medal case. For valor and exceptional skill, Ranger Reeves is awarded the Silver Star. The medal was pinned to her chest. Scarlett saluted. The room applauded. After the ceremony, General Kincaid found her. Walk with me, Ranger. They walked to the edge of the airfield. Kincaid stopped, looked at the mountains. Your grandfather made an 840-yard shot once, saved his entire team. I was on that team. He died the next day, but he died knowing he'd done his duty. Kincaid turned to face her. You have his gift, his character. But now you have a choice. Stay in the field and become a legend, or go home and teach. Both paths are honorable. Sir, what would my grandfather have done? Kincaid smiled. He chose to teach. He believed the most important thing a warrior could do was create more warriors. Your father believed the same. The answer crystallized. Then that's what I'll do. 6 months later, Scarlett stood in front of a classroom at Fort Benning. Ranger School, sniper qualification course, 19 candidates, 6 of them women, the highest number in history. Applications had doubled after news of her shot broke. I'm Instructor Reeves, she began. Call sign, Ghost. 8 years ago, the first day of Ranger School, I was handed a broken rifle. A test. A message that I didn't belong. The candidates listened, completely still. I could have quit. Instead, I carried that rifle for 7 days. When qualification came, I used it. Hit 48 out of 50 targets. 96%. She walked past the female candidates, made eye contact with each. Some of you will face the same thing, something designed to make you fail. I'm here to tell you that you do belong, not because of your gender, but because you chose to be here, because you refuse to accept limitations. She stopped at the front. Behind her, a photograph. Three faces. Jackson Reeves, 1950 to 1983. Marcus Reeves, 1979 to 2011. Scarlett Reeves, 1997 to present. Three generations, one legacy. My grandfather died in Grenada. My father in Afghanistan. Both died Rangers. I'm here because they taught me that service means sacrifice, that Rangers lead the way, that excellence has no prerequisites except willingness. She picked up an M4A1, new, clean, perfect. This is a working rifle. All of you will receive working rifles. I'm not interested in games. I'm interested in making you the best warriors you can be. What matters is whether you can do the job when lives depend on your training. She paused. Questions? A young female candidate raised her hand. Ma'am, when you made that shot, were you scared? Scarlett stopped, looked at the young woman, saw herself 8 years ago. Terrified, she said honestly. But fear is just another variable, like wind, like distance. You calculate for it and take the shot anyway. That's what makes you a legend, ma'am. No, what makes me a ranger is what makes you one. We don't quit, even when the rifle is broken, even when the shot is impossible, even when everyone says we can't. She smiled. The legend isn't the shot, it's what we do after. 2 years later, Scarlett stood at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60, her father's headstone among thousands of others. She visited every year, brought flowers, said nothing, just stood and remembered. This year was different. She wasn't alone. 6 women stood with her, her former students, all now deployed Rangers. Ma'am, Lieutenant Sarah Chen said quietly, yesterday I made a 1,400-yard shot, saved my team from ambush. Scarlett turned, saw the young woman's face, proud, shaken, the look of someone who discovered what they were capable of. Did you hesitate? No, ma'am. I remembered what you taught. Trust the math. Trust the training. Take the shot. Then you're ready. Scarlett looked at all 6. You're not just Rangers. You're proof that the line doesn't break. That legacy continues. She turned to her father's headstone, placed her hand on the cold marble. I made the shot, Dad, she whispered. But more than that, I'm making sure others can too. The broken rifle didn't break me. It made me stronger, and now I'm making them stronger. The wind answered. Or maybe it was just wind. As they walked away, Sergeant Maria Gonzalez fell in beside Scarlett. Ma'am, can I ask something? Go ahead. When you made that 2,137-yard shot, were you scared? Scarlett stopped, saw herself 8 years ago. Terrified, but fear is just another variable to account for, like wind, like distance. You calculate for it and take the shot anyway. That's what makes you a legend, ma'am. No, what makes me a Ranger is what makes you one. We don't quit. The legend isn't the shot, it's what we do after. 6 months later, Fort Benning, another qualification day. Scarlett stood behind a young female candidate, 20 years old, small, determined, holding a rifle with a faulty sight. The girl didn't complain, just adapted, compensated, made the shot. 46 out of 50, distinguished. As the candidate stood, Scarlett stepped forward. Outstanding, Ranger. The girl turned, eyes wide. Ma'am, the rifle was... I know, and you made it work anyway. That's what Rangers do. Scarlett reached into her pocket, pulled out something small, a brass compass, worn, tarnished. The one her grandfather had carried in Grenada. This belonged to my grandfather. He gave it to me through a journal. Now I'm giving it to you. The candidate's hands trembled. Ma'am, I can't. You can, and you will. When your moment comes, remember, the rifle is just metal. You're the weapon. Make every shot count. The girl saluted. Scarlett returned it. As the candidate walked away, Hawk appeared, still serving, still her friend. "You know what that compass means to you," he said. "Are you sure?" Scarlett watched the young woman disappear. "The compass isn't mine. It belongs to whoever needs it most. My grandfather taught me that. Now I'm teaching her." "You've come a long way from the broken rifle girl." "No, I'm still that girl, still carrying something broken, trying to make it work. But now I understand, the rifle was never broken. It was a gift. It taught me that limitations are just excuses." She turned to Hawk. "Every girl who's been told she's not strong enough, she's carrying a broken rifle. My job is to show her how to make the impossible shot anyway. And you're doing it, Ghost, one ranger at a time." That night, Scarlett sat at her desk, opened her grandfather's journal one final time. On the last page below his words in her previous entry, she added one more line. "The broken rifle was never the problem. It was the solution. It taught me that the only limitations that matter are the ones we accept. I'm teaching them to accept none. The mission continues. SR." She closed the journal, locked it in her desk. Tomorrow would bring new students, new challenges, new broken rifles. But tonight, she allowed herself one moment of peace. The shot that everyone remembered, 2,137 yards, wasn't the one that mattered. The shot that mattered was the one with the broken rifle. The one that proved impossible was just another word for challenging. The one that opened the door for everyone who came after. Scarlett "Ghost" Reeves turned off the light. Tomorrow she would lead the way again. Tonight she rested. The broken rifle girl had become the teacher. The legacy was secure. The line would never break.